Nice to see you again, James. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Good to see you too, Reed.
Okay, so we were talking the other day at dinner about this new sort of interview process that you're trying out at Brex that involves AI. And I think I'd like to just get like a recap of that. Like what exactly what's the idea here? And what are you doing over there?
Yeah, I'm really glad we got to have that conversation. There's been a lot of advancement since we last spoke, but the long and short of it is that the role of an engineer is changing. What they're doing day to day on the job is becoming much more a collaboration with agentic coding tools, and we wanted to update our interview loop to reflect that. We've always taken a practical approach to interviewing here, where it's been more focused on assessing the skills that you use on a job versus the more theoretical interviewing style that you'll see from other tech companies. And so instead of asking ourselves like, hey, how do we prevent cheating with AI? We leaned into it and just said, hey, like if this is what the role is going to look like, how do we assess for those skills? And it gives us like an interesting opportunity not only to see whether the candidate will has that level of proficiency, but we can actually use this as a way for us to bring in folks who maybe are more proficient than the average engineer today with these tools because they've had other opportunities to teach or learn on their own.
You used to basically have, if I understand it correctly, you'd have like a coding test or something
Mhm.
like that. But obviously the test had to be done within a reasonable time frame, right? Or maybe even in person at times. But now it's like, I guess with AI, you're going to give somebody a test that there's essentially no way they could just complete it, within that time frame if they didn't use AI. Is that is
Exactly.
that essentially right?
Yeah, we used to
Yeah.
just for reference, we used to have a two hour and 15 minute time window to build just a front end or a back end for an app. And this is you doing it sort of conventionally, typing out every keystroke, and we'd have different interviewers pop in every 45 minutes to kind of be there with you for it. Now we've basically have you build a full stack app, so both front end and back end, in only an hour. And so it's like it would be truly impossible to do it without agentic coding tools.
And have you actually been using this? Like, is this in practice now?
It's in practice. We actually, excitedly, we the first person that we hired who passed this loop is starting at Brex today. Actually, started today.
Oh
So,
wow.
so yeah, we've done this probably with a dozen candidates so far, and we're basically fully rolled out now and scaling it up. The main thing that we've had to do is retrain everybody internally on how to conduct these new interviews because it's not just a single 1 hour interview. That is sort of the core of it, which is the build this full stack app in an hour. But we also have revised our debugging and our systems design interviews to get more signal on how you think about what it looks like to debug code that comes out of an agent versus code that you wrote yourself or by a colleague, and then also to think about how to scale up and design systems that work well in an AI ecosystem. So the whole loop has been redesigned.
What so this employee who starts today, they created a full stack app. Was this an app that an idea you came up with, or did you say come up with an idea for an app and
Yeah, no, it's
they did it?
it's it's a it's an idea we came up with it, but it's like in keeping with most interviews, it has something to do with what Brex does on a day-to-day basis. So it's a financial services application, and we basically give the candidate a heads up in advance that hey, like we want you to lean into using agentic coding tools. So if you're not familiar, get familiar. We also encourage people to even bring some starter code. So maybe bring like a sort of a shell of a full stack app into the interview. And at the beginning of the interview, we give them a spec, some designs, and say, go for it.
Wow. Um, it's such an interesting approach. And I think since then I read something about I think it was like Facebook or Meta or someone doing this, but do you think this is like is are you at the time I had not heard about this, but do you think this is like something that's happening across the industry?
Yeah, I think it's an inevitable shift, just as like the industry made a shift away from asking brain teaser questions to asking people to do more hands-on coding in the interviews. I think that this is a natural evolution of that. But just as that transition took a while, there are plenty of people out there who have a bit of a skeptical view of AI, and they reflect that in their coding assessments. I think that it kind of goes back to like I think if a company decides that they don't want to embrace this and reformat the interview loop to embrace AI, you'll probably find that their leadership also thinks that AI could never write code as good as like, their staff or principal engineers who have like this view that humans are always going to do it better. And I don't know. I mean, I have my own opinions on that. I understand why people have that perspective. Certainly, there's a reason why the word slop has been brought in close proximity to the outputs of AI. But I don't think any forward-thinking company isn't thinking about doing this at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, what are your own opinions on that and the slop? Because I think it has been changing. I think
Yep.
there's been a shift in opinion over the last, I would say, 2 months, where you're hearing a lot more people sort of speak out, and they're not afraid to sound like a Luddite, I guess, and say this AI code is terrible.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's sort of like I view agentic coding because I've been doing a lot of this recently myself. I've actually spent like the past 6 weeks with the team, basically heads down as an IC. So I've had a lot of firsthand experience recently. I think the role of the engineer is kind of shifting from being the person who writes the code to being a person who manages an agent that's writing the code. And the fascinating thing is like if you don't know how to express what you want or how to break down a task or how to give feedback to somebody who's completing a task, how to collaborate, how to review, or your designs and your initial thinking is not very clear, then the code that results is going to also reflect that. And so, I mean, it just as like many, I forget who said it, that writing is a form of thinking. I think that the code that you write is actually a way that you work out thoughts about how a system needs to be built. And so if you're completely delegating that away without doing the upfront work of understanding the shape of the problem as well as the intended shape of the solution, if you're not reviewing the code and providing feedback incrementally, yeah, you're going to get a big pile of crap. And you can keep maybe hammering the system to like add more features to it, but it will accumulate tons of craft, no different than a code base that is being built by folks who haven't applied that same level of craft. So I think it really is sort of garbage in, garbage out, but you can achieve really, really impressive outcomes as well if you treat the agent as a collaborator, not just as somebody that you're saying, if you're giving, 2 sentences and saying, build it.
Right. And I guess if you're reviewing that code, and you're sort of you're that manager of the AI code. I mean, it's not in the end. The end product is not really like an AI generated, app, right, or software. It's really there's some automation in the process, but ultimately it's a human who's signing off on that, who knows what they're doing in
Exactly.
that situation.
Yeah, and it's interesting because the software development lifecycle, this is true for us, but I think it's true for all of the other companies that I think are on the bleeding edge of this. The software development lifecycle still has all of the same beats to it. Like even if agents are doing certain parts of it, it's like you're still usually like breaking down a spec into some tickets. The tickets maybe are getting implemented, but or maybe you're using one agent to help like write a spec or break it down. And then maybe an agent is taking those tickets and then it's going to put out a pull request or like some set of changes that will then get reviewed maybe by another agent. But like, so you have a collaboration between agents that are written by different companies. So to some degree, like there's a lot of benefit from not having like the same person review their own work. But I think like it really comes down to like, how proactive are humans in supervising this? Because it's very easy to get lazy. It's very easy to just like type like a couple of sentences and then come back like 10 minutes later and say, it looks like it works and merge it. That's how you end up with like a sloppy code base. And so the signals we're actually looking for in this interview have a lot more to do with how are you supervising the system? What kind of prompting do you give it to refine the outcome? Do you have a good sense of taste of when something is a high degree of quality or when like what is your definition of done? And then also like being aware of how just how the code is actually running. Like I think it's still very important that you can answer questions about the code that's being written and understand what it's doing. If you don't have that, then you don't have the fundamentals of the job.
See, a dozen people is not like a huge sample size, but
Yeah.
I mean, do you have a sense though of like what is it like who's good at these interviews? Is it young? Do they skew younger? Is it a certain mindset? Like, what are you sort of? again, I know it's early, but like figuring out some patterns here.
I wish I could say that there's a clear pattern because we can also look internally to like the level agent adoption. Generally, people who are younger externally are performing better, and I think that there's this concept of people who basically learned to code in the past couple of years in a fully agentic world who have just a lot more intuition, not just about how to like prompt the agent, but like they're able to do things that are a bit more advanced, like spin up 4 or 5 different agents and delegate different tasks for them to work on simultaneously. That's like one thing that we saw from the person who started today was just how gracefully they were able to actually manage an entire team in real time over the course of that hour with multiple agents running. But yeah, I would say trend wise, younger people are performing better. I think that internally it's much more mixed. We have just as many like senior and staff engineers who are fully leaned in and can't go back as we do new hires who are on the more junior end.
When that person is like spinning up their agents in different, I guess it's tabs or something, right? Or I don't know how they're doing it, but maybe, but like, what's the, um, is that something like everyone at Brex is already doing, or is it almost like, oh wow, like we're learning something from this candidate right now and how to like how we really should be using AI?
It's very much a learning process for everyone. Like I think what has been fascinating, I'm going to use an example internally from this past month where I've been heads down with the team. Um, we all have different tool chains that we like to use. So not everybody is using the same AI agent or the same code editor, and consequently, everybody has their own sort of tips and tricks, and it's almost as though like everybody has their own management style, and so it's actually really fun to kind of shoulder surf like and just check out like how certain people are building or what their day to day looks like, and so we do learn from watching candidates as well. And I think that the candidate I'm thinking of certainly had the most novel approach that I've seen to coordinating multiple agents, which is that they had a document that all of the agents were working off of, where they update this document as they went with notes about what they had started, what they had completed. And then there was one agent that was entirely responsible for traffic control and delegating the work. And so that was something that I hadn't seen before. It seems intuitive. Honestly, it sounds like something you could do with humans. And generally, that's the rule of thumb is like if it works for humans, generally will work for the agents. But yeah, it's neat. It's like every day I'm kind of learning something new from people I'm around.
Do you ask them like where they learned it? Like, is it like, are they on like Reddit, like YouTube, or is this like being taught in CS classes now?
No, I think it's all just like in the community in the ether. So it's people posting on X and I think yeah all these other social networks.
I haven't actually heard, and this may be happening. Like, it could be that AI is being used in other types of job interviews too, not just coding ones. I haven't heard of it, but I mean, has this like has this made you think broadly about like just what is the job interview across every industry going to look like in the AI future?
I would imagine that there's a good analogy or like a good analog for this for basically every role and especially every like knowledge worker role. We've actually started in our non-engineering now, like we do this in eng product and design. Like the other two departments are also adapting their interviews to get signal on that. But we're doing a company-wide push right now to look at how we interview for basically every single role to ensure that we're getting some level of signal on AI proficiency. And a big part to this is that we also need to develop that proficiency internally as well. And so what we've done is like every department has gone through and spent time, for the most part, like all of them hosted an offsite where they get everybody together and basically start the week with like, what are things that we do on the regular? What are some of the problems we face in the department? And then they kind of all have hackathons where they've gone out and built agents, built tools, or tried to adapt existing tools to solve problems. And I think that that's more or less the signal I would want to get. Like if I was hiring somebody on the people team for recruiting, I would probably want to see like, how could they leverage AI to write a JD more effectively? And you probably actually look for a lot of the same characteristics that we're looking for in engineers, which is, can you provide really clear guidance at the beginning and critique the output and iterate and collaborate, not just one shot it?
Are you finding, I mean, just like, across the company, I guess there's obviously AI coding, but like, is it changing the workforce, do you think? Like, what's the head count? Obviously you're hiring people, it sounds like. Um, but is it like, is the hiring slowing down, and is it because of AI?
I think the way I look at this is like we haven't adopted like a strict mandate like that you have to prove that you can't do this role with AI before you hire for it. But every leader in the leadership team is thinking about the impact not only on like the overall headcount growth, but how do the roles look different over the course of the next couple of years? Like as we think about the skill sets that will be needed. And so I actually spend a lot of time with our COO, Camilla, talking about what like an AI native ops organization would look like. And so it ends up looking more like people who are shaping the output of agents, who are doing prompt design and engineering, who are able to do quality control. It's less of the hands on keyboard again, like doing manual payment operations or KYC. And so I think companies like just, this is another form of efficiency. And to some degree, I think we could operate with like fewer people and fewer, like less incremental growth in order to scale with this shape of our business. But that additional efficiency creates new opportunities. It creates the opportunity for us to build new products or, I think every time you gain an efficiency, you don't necessarily just want to return it to the bottom line. You may want to reinvest that somewhere else.
You had an interesting way of dealing with like AI, all these AI software tools as well that are coming out, right? Like how you decide what to pay for and what not to pay for.
Yeah, yeah. We
I,
actually we had got into that a little bit when we last spoke. Um, I think there's a thesis that like emerged really really early on as we were thinking about SaaS procurement and like AI spend for internal use, which was that whoever's in the front of the pack today is likely not going to be the front runner 3 months from now. And so the entire procurement process, which is usually geared around making decisions slowly, methodically, negotiating really aggressively in order to make a single like wall-to-wall procurement decision, it doesn't really work because it's very difficult to say today what is going to be best for the entire company 6 months from now, let alone a year or 3 years from now. And so, in order to ensure that we weren't like bottlenecked on procurement, we went through and sort of reevaluated the entire process. All of like the governance, risk compliance, legal, finance reviews to streamline and make it really easy to get a proof of concept sort of approved for use very early. And so that means that people who see something on Twitter that they want to try out can like really quickly start kicking the tires without having to worry about breaking the rules or breaking any of our controls. And then what we've also done is we've basically refused, with a couple of small exceptions, we've refused to go wall to wall on anything. And instead, we do license pooling for most of the AI tools that we have. So instead of saying we're going to go all in on ChatGPT Enterprise, we actually have, let's say, like 300 seats of ChatGPT that you can basically check out. If you want to swap over and have a seat on Claude Enterprise, you could do that instead. And we have a certain pool of licenses there. And so we're really trying to facilitate choice. I think it looks a little bit like the choice between like being able to get an iPhone or an Android. Like people are building these comfort levels with different AI tools, and it actually kind of runs counter to driving productivity for us to just say everybody must use this one.
it's starting to look to me a little bit like a lot of these AI tools are really just SaaS when companies are like we're building agents for whatever, and then you see the demo and it's like it's kind of just SaaS. Like
Yeah.
you're just is that do you get that sense? Like what it's like SaaS is dead, but like it's being replaced by SaaS.
Yeah, I just yes, I love the way you're putting it. It's yeah, SaaS is dead, long live agents, which are also SaaS. I think
Right.
what's
Right.
interesting about it is um, there was a talk I gave internally a year ago as I kind of muddled through what does this mean for our business and how do we think about moats in the context of SaaS being easily disruptible by somebody who's just prompting software into existence at a rapid pace. And I think that at the end of the day, even if agents tend to replace SaaS and you have all of this new software layer replacing the old one, The value capture really is around what does that interface with. And so for us, all of the software that we have today and all the agents we're building for tomorrow interface with financial infrastructure that we own and operate and have a deep level of expertise in. You know, we actually basically make all of our money off of the use of that financial infrastructure. So it's sort of like taking a toll on the dollars that pass through our system versus charging for the SaaS itself. So we're like very comfortable with the idea of you know, one form of SaaS in the form of agents kind of cannibalizing another. And I think that the most durable way to build a business around that is to think about what it connects up to. And I mean, the financial infrastructure of the globe right now is also like ripe for disruption with stable coins and blockchain technology making a comeback. But I think that there's going to be a lot of value, residual value there for us to create for a long time to come, because things like extending credit or providing even access to these regulated ecosystems where you have to pass a bunch of KYC and safety checks are things that you can't just sort of prompt into existence, unlike maybe prompting some SaaS or an agent into existence.
Obviously, you're not an AI
Yeah,
researcher, or you'd be making $1 billion a year at
right.
Meta. But you know, like as a consumer, as somebody who like sees the other end of it, right? Which is like, how do these things perform? How's the code they're putting out? That kind of stuff.
One thing that helps me to realize that we've made a really significant leap forward is that we're actually now implementing things that we tried to build a year and like 18 months ago, where the technology just wasn't capable at the time of producing high enough quality results. And so I think especially the reasoning models, as well as the larger context sizes, which can facilitate less hallucination, especially with tool usage, has been really, really powerful for us. It's like unlocked a lot of what we've wanted to be able to build to create that agentic finance stack. But you know, I think that you very quickly will see performance degradation when the context gets too large, and you'll also see just some really goofy um, uh, like blips in like the chain of thought that these models are exposing to you. And so I think like if you spend time also building with AI, like as a coder, like 8 hours a day, it becomes really obvious that the aptitude of the system still sits somewhere in the like, you know, mid junior to mid level at best, and it still needs a lot of supervision. But I do believe that with the advancements that we're seeing, like it'll be materially different a year from now. And so one of the things I tell the team is like always like just trust the LLM. Let's believe that the LLM can do the job. And until we've proven ourselves that it's not viable, we're going to lean in. And if we do reach that point with a given use case, we're just willing to try it again in 6 months. You know, we'll try it again when the next big rev of the next foundational model comes out.
Do you think, and just on the topic of
Mhm.
hiring these sort of AI native software developers, do you think that at some point that your whole code base has to become sort of AI native? I mean, do you have to change it because it's too, I mean, this is another
Mhm.
thing we were talking about the other day. It's like you have these code bases that are built post AI code, vibe coding era, or whatever you want to
Yep.
call it, and and they look different, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's fascinating. There's a mantra that a wise engineer introduced to the industry about 15 years ago of choosing boring technology, and really what that means is like don't don't pick tech, don't pick frameworks, don't pick languages that are unpopular, that are interesting, because it always creates challenge scaling and maintaining in the long run. And so what has really proven out here is that like LLMs are extremely well versed on boring technology. They understand the things that are most popular, and so the more that companies have colored between the lines versus doing esoteric things with their code bases, the easier it is for those LLM agents to actually operate on those brownfield code bases. But I will say, like, you're keying off of something that's very true, which is that a code base that is written primarily by AI is going to be a lot more intelligible to AI and is going to be much easier for the AI to extend and continue maintaining. And so we're actually experiencing and experimenting with that right now, where this this recent investment into the next gen of agents at Brex that I've been working on myself for the past 6 weeks, we actually decided the beginning to work in an entirely new code base and pick different programming languages from the ones that we have been using in the past, in order to make it easier for the agents, so to speak. So they're writing a lot of TypeScript or JavaScript instead of Kotlin, which is the choice that we made for our backend in the pre-AI era. And they perform much better at writing TypeScript because there's just a ton more of it to draw from on the internet versus Kotlin.
That's fascinating. But you haven't actually, so is that like this is an experiment on the side and you may like then eventually swap it out or?
Yeah, well, the question there's a couple paths. One is that we abandon it. We kind of assume that we learn what we need to learn, and we realize perhaps that there's diminishing ROI from having a new code base with a different set of tech. It's possible that both live alongside each other for the long run, which I think is probably the most likely outcome. And then we just use service-oriented architecture patterns to kind of stitch the two things together from a customer's perspective. Or there's a third outcome, which is that this new code base actually ends up subsuming the old one over a longer period of time. And I think that there's not a lot of value in performing migrations just for the sake of like rewriting something. In fact, there's a lot of theory about why that's a terrible idea. But I like to think that what we're doing right now is building a tiny like seed stage startup that is kind of operating as a seed stage startup would operate today, which is like almost all agentic coding, a bit of a different day-to-day working style. And that what we might do is we might eventually like have a reverse merger where the existing Brex merges in, and we think about like then how to combine the cultures.
Oh, that's fascinating. So it's like a startup within a startup, essentially, if you can call it Brex a startup, but
Yeah, and and I think that there's a lot of cheesiness to that trope, like the startup in a startup, they almost like always fail.
Yeah, yeah,
The one thing that I think has been really helpful here is that we've embraced the resourcing constraints of a startup,
yeah.
and have been really like we think about it in terms of like hiring another person into the team as opposed to just growing the team. It's like what does that look like? Do we want to increase our burn rate? There's actually a lot of it feels like being a founder again, which has been quite a lot of fun. And I think what's been helpful is that we're learning lessons about org design and about um, the interaction between like product design and engineering in this new world that I don't think we would learn if we didn't try something a little bit more clean slate like greenfield as we're doing right now. And I think that the interaction between the roles is probably the most interesting thing. We have a designer who's pushing just as much code as any other engineers on the team right now, and granted she's doing it all agentically. She really didn't know how to write code beforehand, but we've been able to, because we built this code base to be operated on by agents. It's really easy for her to direct an agent to perform work on it, and then we just do some review at the end.
Is it an interesting one? Like I mean, the startup within a startup might be a cliche, but this is like different because it's, in my mind, it's like you're not actually, it's not like a new idea. It's like, what if we could just did like the same business, but like with all the new tools, right?
Yep.
And that I haven't seen before. It's like, a totally, I don't know, seems new to me.
Yeah, and there's one other thing that I think is really like interesting that I've heard from the very young, like precocious, like 20 something college dropouts that we're interviewing to join the team. Like I've been very curious, like why would these why would these candidates want to join a company of Brex's size and scale? Like, and I don't mean that in a like, oh, you shouldn't join Brex, or like this isn't the place to grow your career or whatever. But I think for like it's actually kind of funny. Like a lot of these folks are like 20 years old, and then they have like 17 items on their resume, and they've like started 6 companies, and they've been consulting and doing all these internships and things, and it's just like it's very different for them to think about joining a company like Brex. But the thing that I found that really appeals to them that they can't get from all the startup experiences that they've had previously is the distribution advantage of a business of our scale, where they could build something that can immediately go out to hundreds of thousands of business users. And so it's actually that distribution advantage, as you were kind of pointing out, like the fact that we have an existing business that this software can slot into, or this AI can slot into, that is actually most compelling, the most compelling value prop for these younger AI native engineers.
I guess I'm also just wondering if there is some new, if you see the way this technology is heading, like, is it possible that it changes the whole landscape of the industry, right? That somehow, there is a new what comes after Brex question here. Have you thought much about that?
I have. I think it's a little, this. I'm still like an engineer at heart, and so it's tougher for me to like put my head in the clouds and like dream to that level. I actually really respect one of our co-founders, Enrique, for his ability to just like see the world 5 to 10 years ahead. It's funny because even at, like the dawn of LLMs, when they started, when ChatGPT was released over 3 years or coming up 3 years ago, he's just like, James, like somebody's going to be able to go into that LLM soon and type clone Brex. So what are you going to do about it? And I'm like, oh, that's ridiculous. They can't even like, they hallucinate like very basic facts. And sure enough, like that's what we're talking about happening right now. So the one thing I'll say is, um, I think that the only way that companies will be able to navigate the potential of disruption that we're going to see in the next couple of years is to work very, like, to be very comfortable partnering and working with other companies to co-create that future. I think like that's one of the biggest insurance policies we have against becoming obsolete or being disrupted to an extent that we're not unable to recover or continue creating value, is that we're willing to take like our financial infrastructure and sort of co-sell it and integrate it into our competitors while also building competing products with them. And so I think that like our view of like how we're embracing AI is that we want to be able to be the system of action that can operate over other people's data, as well as maybe being the system of record for agents that are being built by our competitors. Like, we're taking a very liberal approach to this, which is different from the more walled garden, like Microsoft approach of it's all got to be in our ecosystem.
I think we've got what we need. Unless there's anything else you want to add.
No, I think that we covered a lot of ground today, Reed. So I'm
That's
I'm I'm
great.
just excited that this caught your interest, and
Yeah.
I think for me, like I I have no idea exactly what it's going to look like, what that nature work is
Yeah.
going to look like in a couple of years, but it's been a lot of
Yeah.
fun to just trade ideas with folks and try to create, like, do our part to create a little bit of it.
I can't wait to watch that video. I got to see this interview. It's gonna be
Oh, you
interesting.
know what? There's one more thing I wanted to share, which is
Yeah.
regarding the interview. So we went through the process. We've only maybe interviewed a dozen people externally, but we've interviewed, I don't know, 30, 40, possibly 50 people internally in order to play test it and ensure that we're getting the right signals, that it wasn't too easy or too difficult. Just like really want to calibrate it before we put it out in the world. And what we found uh, with a lot of folks who took this interview is that they had like a moment of realization during the interview that caused them to like level up their own agentic coding abilities.
Huh.
And so this was like a very interesting thing, and that's something that you'll see in the video that we shared with you, is like this engineer is, I wouldn't say struggling, but maybe like not leaning enough into using the agent up front, maybe writing most of the code and just using autocomplete themselves, and then they start reaching a problem or a corner of the problem that they're not immediately familiar with. So they're like, oh, I'm going to go and try asking the agent. And they had a moment of like an aha moment where they're like, oh, shit. I didn't realize it could do that so well. And then from there, like throughout the rest of the interview, like their overall aptitude, like took a clear step up. And so
Wow.
it was neat because like every organization, regardless of what they're willing to tell you, is still struggling to get 100% of people to adopt this new way of working. And so we saw that the interview was like a useful tool for that. And so we're going through the process of having every single engineer go through and take that new interview. It's a great way to also train to be on the other side of the table, performing the interview. But everybody going through it is something that we believe will also just help to increase our collective aptitude and create more of those aha moments. And so it was just like a little neat side effect that we discovered in the process of testing the interview internally.
Wow. Yeah, it's interesting. So you're like learning on the interview, as they
Yep.
say.
Yep.
It's very cool. Thank you so much for the time. It's great to chat again. Really, really interesting thing you're doing there.
Likewise, Reed. I hope you have a good rest of your afternoon.
Thanks. You too, James.
See ya.
Bye.